Hi, and welcome to Weekly Word with Stitched Head and Heart Project. We are in our new office today. Tomorrow we will be taking clients, and Saturday will be our soft opening. So we are super excited. We will have a special guest, and her name is Melissa Teal Hartman. She is a intuitive soul coach, and she works out of my hometown, the Black Hills. So she's fantastic. She's going to be doing readings with us. And then our media coverage will be via Google News. A great friend of mine, Michael J. Wells, will be doing, he's a photographer here. He's a local Phoenix photographer, and he rocks. He's covered my modeling and my runway shows, so that's been super cool, and he's gonna come and cover our opening, Stitched Head and Heart's opening. So I'm like super excited about the next 2 days. I'm not gonna be able to sleep. But with that in mind, I am going to rush this along. So our weekly word is going to be a little bit shorter today, but there were some things that were coming up last week. I went on a small little retreat and vacay, and did some meditation and some thinking, and I came up with this. Okay, so within the community, within clients, we know this is my ongoing thing, seeing this synchronicity, right? So I know this isn't happening just for, me or for, a few people. It's happening more often than not. And so last week we discussed finding boundaries within and identifying unhealthy relationships. And I don't want to make it all negative. So I'm trying to find the light here in this situation, but I wanted to do a small follow-up on that. So I came up with this. When is compromise no longer compromise? So within intimate relationships, and that's the thing, I always say intimate because that's firsthand, what I deal with primarily, but it happens in platonic relationships, it happens in business relationships, it happens in parent-child relationships, where we begin to compromise so much that the scale of reciprocity is no longer even. And one person is giving a whole lot more while the other person is taking a whole lot more. And because we're human beings, we are subject to that emotional response. And I had talked about, people who will stuff versus people who will, wants to get it right in the forefront. That's not where we're going to go today, but keep those two personality types just as a spectrum in mind as we think about this, because it really isn't about, compromise is a good thing. It's a compromise and communication. Those are two fantastic C's in any relationship that you're going to be in, but compromise can go too far. So how do we know when it's gone too far? How do we know when the scale of reciprocity and balance in the relationship is no longer healthy? I think when it's disastrous, it's pretty easy to tell, right? But it's a sneaky, little thing, and there's oftentimes a person in a relationship who is very comfortable giving, and both parties are probably relatively comfortable receiving as well. But where do we draw that line? Where do we honor our partners and our relationships, but also love and honor ourselves? I think a lot of people in relationships are afraid to A, show their ugly side, B, be perceived as selfish. But the truth is we're individuals, and we have to be whole first. So trying to find something as fulfillment-wise from an outside source, this is common knowledge, but you see it over and over again in relationships, that you're trying to gain that fulfillment. If it's a business relationship, it could be out of money. And whose toes are you stepping on? Your partner that's had your back your entire time, or your entire tenure of your business. Is it your brother or sister that you are no longer willing to compromise with and work with because they trespassed against you? Is it your child that you're holding in absolute emotional prison because in a lot of ways your life has been compromised? You know, I always giggle at that because I'm a parent, so I take care of a lot of boys. So it's easy to feel that way as a parent, that you are being taken advantage of, and it's easy to assume that you're supposed to be a caretaker and a giver, but the best of parents teach their kiddos how to be strong human beings. So that'll be another one. That'll be another weekly word, because I promise to keep this one short. So 3 identifiers. When compromise is no longer compromise and we are putting ourselves in situations that are unhealthy. We are not honoring our relationship. We are not honoring ourselves. We are not honoring our partner by enabling them. These are your 3 indicators. This is what I see that is most ubiquitous between that unhealthy reciprocity balance. So the first one is contempt. If you can find yourself rolling your eyes at your partner, good indicator that there's some contempt there. That there is some repressed stuff that you are not communicating, and it is not their job to read your mind. So if you aren't communicating that things feel out of balance, that's your responsibility as well, okay? So contempt being 1. Resentment. Are you resenting your partner? Do you find yourself, it's almost jealous. It's that feeling of, to me, I'm very kinesthetic, so everything's a feeling. It's that twinge in my side where I'm like, yeah, it must be nice to have that extra time to go do whatever you want to do, because I'll be here, working my tail off. So that's the indicator of resentment. Okay. The third one being passive aggressive martyrdom. Okay, so I just used a passive aggressive text phrase. Must be nice. That it can go further. You can do passive-aggressive communication is violent, and it's sneaky, and it's soft, but it's still violent. And I will go deeper into passive-aggressive martyrdom at one point, because it's such a sly way to be aggressive. So we'll go into that in another weekly word, because we simply don't have the time. But so that's going to be the other indicator. So those 3: contempt, resentment, and then the passive aggressive martyrdom. Okay, so if you're seeing and or experiencing either of those things in your relationship, any of those things in your relationship is no longer compromised. It is in an unhealthy end of the spectrum. This is a red flag. These are things that need to be talked about, need to be dealt with, and honor your partner by telling them how you feel. Keeping things bottled up isn't doing you doing you any good, and it isn't doing them any good either. And giving more than you can give and not taking enough isn't doing them any good, because they're being enabled. And you're becoming resentful and passive-aggressive and acting like a martyr. So let's not do that. Instead, let's say how we feel. I know it's hard, and I know sometimes it feels selfish, but it is very important to honor your own person and be a whole person and be full enough to be able to pour out, because you cannot pour out of an empty cup. You just simply cannot. So in speaking with a confidant, there's some pretty unhealthy behaviors that can be derivative of being in this spot where the scales are out of balance. And one of the questions that kind of came up was, gosh, it was such an effective way of saying it, and now at this point I can't remember. It escapes me. It was the whole purpose of this specific weekly word. But Shoot. Anyways, maybe I'll put it in the bottom on the YouTube script, but it was essentially along the lines of, you know, how far am I willing to sacrifice and or dumb down my efficacy in order to satiate or sate this specific relationship. That's basically the overall idea of what we were discussing. So you got to ask yourself that question. You really do. And anyways, we're going to sign off real quick. Find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, find us on Instagram. Post your questions, your comments below the video here, and we will see you next week.